Pro players and streamers complaining about the games they play is a tale as old as Twitch. Imperial Hal has been begging for changes to ranked since Season 14. Sweet displays visible signs of depression when he plays ranked, and Plats and Diamonds have been matching with Preds for over a year now. If you've only been playing Apex for a year, you probably don't even know that there was a different rank system before. Even I forget sometimes that getting the number 1 Pred spot wasn't always a kill race, and gold lobbies didn't used to have 5 squads alive in Ring 5. People who used to breeze up to Masters struggle to make it into Diamond now, and if you don't believe me, don't worry, I've got the data to prove that. The game looks very different now from when Ranked Reloaded debuted in Season 13. But is that a good thing? Hi y'all, my name is Wheaties, and I wanted to do a different kind of video today. I want to do a deep discussion on how the current ranked system has improved Apex as a whole, but also how it's failed and what might be done about that. Before we get into things, I'd appreciate it if you'd like the video as it helps get my content into the algorithm. If you want more stuff like this, then don't forget to subscribe. Now, before we get into the current strengths and weaknesses of the ranked system, it's important that we understand what was happening before and why a change was necessary in the first place. Now, the Ranked Leagues playlist was introduced back in Season 2 alongside Wattson and went largely unchanged until about Season 11. Differences in scoring, RP caps, and other minor things would change between seasons as Respawn tried to keep things fresh, but the basic idea never drastically changed. Back in these seasons, the cost of entry was lower, but the potential gains in RP were also lower. KP was capped at 6 kills, so there was no reason to fight more than 2 squads. You also gained a flat rate of RP per kill and assist. Placement was still valuable, but it didn't multiply the value of your KP the way that it does now. All of the ranks had a lower RP cap to get into, by the way. For example, Masters, which is currently 15,000 RP, used to only take 10,000 RP to get to, because you were gaining less RP from your games. Now, this led to a common mentality that you've probably heard before: fight early, play it safe for late game. If you won your first fight in bronze, silver, or gold, then you're probably not going to lose RP even if you die immediately after. Do that in plat, you would still just have to make it to like top 10, and it became increasingly more difficult as you got to Diamond and Masters, but the same idea was there. Oh, another thing that we used to have that I almost forgot to mention: demotion protection. You could not demote out of a rank no matter how badly you were getting smacked around. This led to a lot of players climbing to a rank and then just getting hard stuck and full sending everything after that because they didn't have any reason to care after that. For example, if you were hard stuck Diamond and you knew you weren't good enough to make it to Masters, or that you just didn't have enough time, then why take ranked seriously at all? I'll just make the climb next season since I won't have as far to go. I'll just full send everything and use that as an opportunity to just get better at fighting. If you look at the chart that I have here of rank distributions in Season 10, you'll see that Tier 4 of any given rank is huge compared to the other tiers, indicating that getting hard stuck was a pretty common occurrence, and it still occurs today, but was certainly a worse problem back in these days. Now, Respawn wanted to address that, make the distribution look a little more balanced, so they started making more significant changes in Season 11. The first major change they made was adjusting the kill cap. Instead of capping KP at 6, they capped total RP gained from kills and assists at 125. They also implemented diminishing returns, so each successive kill was worth less RP, until eventually kills would stop being worth anything after, I believe, 10 kills. This added emphasis on kills was probably meant to do 2 things. Number 1, it would help higher skilled players get out of lower ranked lobbies faster, as their fighting skill would be rewarded better. Fighting is obviously not the only variable in a battle royale, but it is probably the most significant one, so it's the easiest way to seed out good players from bad ones. Number 2, it would give hard-stuck players a better opportunity to rank up, seeing as how so many of them spent their games full-sending squads anyways. I don't know for certain that Respawn had that in mind when they made the change, but it makes sense to me given the issue that we saw in the graph. Now, this change was great in some ways, but it very quickly took the spotlight off of placement points. Kill 10 players and you're gaining RP even in Masters lobbies, so you could literally wipe 3 squads at the beginning of the game and die in 17th place and still gain RP, which doesn't really fit with the mentality of Battle Royale. You want people to value getting to those late games. But a lot of players did the math and decided there's very little risk of me losing RP if I just fight constantly, so I'll just do that. Respawn didn't like this, so they made more adjustments in Season 12 to try and put some of the emphasis back on placement. And the changes they made, while subtle, would have a severely negative impact on the ranked experience. Now, what they did was de-emphasize KP a little bit, reducing total RP gained from kills down to 100. To balance that out, they raised the RP you would gain by placement. They didn't perfectly balance it out, though. People were now gaining slightly more RP than on average than in previous seasons. If I remember right, this was also the season where you would get more or less RP depending on who you killed. For example, A plat player killing a bronze would not gain nearly as much as he would if he killed a masters player. People were now gaining slightly more RP on average than in previous seasons, but that couldn't be too much of a problem, right? Well, here's what the rank distribution for Season 15 Split 2 looked like, and here's how it looked for Season 12 Split 2. Notice any issues? For context, I was hard stuck Diamond 4 in Season 15 Split 2, which put me in roughly the top 5% of the population. Masters in Season 12 Split 2 was over 6% of the population. A performance that last month just barely got me into Diamond would have been considered mastery of the game a year ago. Now, I consider myself pretty good at this point. I get some decent clips, I win some pretty good games, but have I mastered Apex? I still land on the same gun as 3 other people and try to make it work. I'm not a master. There's still obvious things that I can improve on, and I would not consider myself at the top level at all. Describing why this issue in the ranked system occurred is kind of complicated, and I can only offer theories because I don't have the data and the experience and knowledge that Respawn has. But I will present a few relevant variables for you to consider here. Now, variable number 1, people could still rank up solely by fighting under this system. When you're fighting people of equal skill, that's not a problem. It means you have to get better at fighting to rank up. It's kind of a reductionist way of gauging skill in a game with as many variables as a battle royale, but there was still a skill gap and a clear skill progression to be measured. But that's not what was happening in Season 12 because of variable number 2. People could rank up solely through placement. A lot of lower ranked players were able to reach higher ranks before they knew how to properly fight, since placement points were more valuable. Most of these people would end up in platinum. You might have heard the common phrase, you just ratted to get plat, rat to plat. This made them pretty easy pickings for good fighters, which fed the good fighters even more as they were able to reach higher ranks before they knew how to play for placement. This led to a massive population spike in Diamond of players who otherwise would have been stuck in Platinum, players who had decent gun skill, but didn't really get good at the finer points of Apex, like when to pick a fight or how to rotate out of tough situations. So anyone who was thinking beyond fighting would breeze to Masters. I also want to take a moment to say that if you achieved a higher rank than usual in Season 12, I don't want to diminish your achievement. I could only make Plat back then, so if you made Diamond or Masters, like, props to you, dude, I respect that. But I think we can agree that the system had some issues in that season, and you might have noticed that by the quality of your opponents and your teammates too. If you watched any Preds play in Season 12, you definitely heard them complaining about the low quality of their lobbies. These lobbies were filled with nothing but Masters players. Not like the current problem we have, where Pred lobbies often have Plats and Diamonds. They were filled with Masters players, but these weren't players who had actually mastered the game. They were good at all of the important skills. They were obviously above average and somewhere in the top % of the population, but they still made mistakes that would make today's Diamond players embarrassed for them, and they weren't particularly challenging at all for Preds. Over half the population ended up above gold in this season, which is absurd to think about today, especially since we consider gold to be sort of the center, sort of the average rank for the population. So Respawn eventually listened to the community and made a complete overhaul for Season 13. I say eventually, but given how complicated the changes they made were, I'm sure they were working on this for some time and they'd been aware of the issues with the old system for a while. So Season 13 is where the bones of the current system were established. Gone were the days of wiping a squad early and just coasting to RP gains. The rookie rank was introduced, entry costs for all ranks were increased, including an added cost to bronze that wasn't there before, and KP would now increase in value the higher you placed. This meant that you could wipe 3 squads off drop, and if you died in 17th place, you could still lose RP at most ranks. Whereas ranked games used to be down to 5 squads in Ring 2, it became more common to see closing rings packed with teams vying their time, searching for that perfect little opening to secure themselves a better placement. It was amazing to watch at the top levels and super intense to play, but the harshness of the system led to a very bottom-heavy distribution. This was the season where making it to Plat meant that you'd be eligible to match against Masters and Preds, because the population in Diamond and up was smaller than ever. Diamond 3 had less players than Masters did, by the way. You'll also notice by the way that the distribution here in Silver is almost perfectly flat. There's no noticeable slope to be seen. That's going to be important. We're going to talk about that later when we get into more of the fundamental flaws with the current system, because this slope, it continues to stay flat for multiple seasons. The main issue with Ranked in Season 13 wasn't how it performed at the top level, as most Diamond and higher players seem to love the challenge and exclusivity of it. It also more closely resembles the way that ALGS currently works, giving a lot of players their first taste of how competitive Apex could really be. Problem was that over 90% of the population was gold or below, which meant they would frequently match with and against each other. And I don't know about you, but I think somebody in the top 10 or 20% of performers in a game shouldn't be matching against someone who just got out of the bottom 20%. When Season 14 came around, Respawn made one key change in an attempt to push better players into Plat and eventually into Diamond. They removed the RP cap on kills entirely. No more diminishing returns, just get as many kills as you can and get as high of a placement as you can. And it worked. It very obviously worked. The stats don't lie. Just compare those hard stuck humps to what we had in Season 12, and you can immediately tell that the distribution looks a lot healthier. For Plat and Diamond, it looked healthier for Plat and Diamond. There haven't been any groundbreaking changes to the system since Season 14, so I feel confident that we can say we have arrived at the current state of ranked leagues. So how do things look today? Well, let's first talk about the elephant in the room, the pred cap. Since the kill cap was removed, getting and maintaining pred has required players to consistently blow up lobbies to the point where they're not even thinking about placement anymore because they can't even maintain their spot if they're not constantly wiping people. Whereas in Season 13, being pred meant consistently winning and getting higher placements. There was eventually a sort of soft cap in RP that Masters and Preds could gain. Now it's literally just a straight up kill race every season. But if we're honest, that issue doesn't affect most of us. If you're Plat or Diamond, the ranked experience is probably great. Diamond is a little harsh, and yeah, we get bad teammates every now and then, but these ranks still show a slope that indicates a gradual thinning out of players until you have only the ones that are truly progressing. Plat is probably the healthiest looking rank of all of these for the same reasons. The difference between each tier matters, and you can genuinely gauge your progress and be proud of it. But again, if we're honest, that doesn't matter to most of us. Most of the population sits below Plat, where the real issue with the system becomes evident. You may be wondering why I keep bringing up the slopes of these graphs, so bear with me, there's a little bit of math involved here. Not really numbers, but just concepts. I promise I won't overwhelm you with stuff that isn't relevant. Basically, any data distribution related to skill should have something resembling a normal distribution. A classic example of this is IQ across the population. The lower performers fall on the left, the highest performers become increasingly scarce on the right, and roughly about 68% of us fall right here in the middle. Now, Apex's ranked distribution will never look like that because people will often stop playing ranked when they reach their goals. However, we should still see the second half of a normal distribution within each rank. If Respawn divided each rank into enough tiers, we would probably see somewhat of a normal distribution within the rank. Those distributions would be skewed a bit to the right, meaning that less data ends up on the right side. Now earlier I called Plat and Diamond slopes healthy, meaning they seem to be distributing players as you would expect. The farther you go, the less players you find. If you look at Gold, you'll notice there's a slope, but it's pretty subtle. Bronze has a slope too, even with Bronze 4 being a bit of an outlier. The main problem here, though, is that Silver is essentially flat. It peaks at Silver 2, which is strange, but there's really no significant difference in any of these ranks at all. So what does that mean? Well, imagine we wanted to make an equation that would predict someone's rank. And imagine the equation needed two variables, skill level and time played. So imagine that all I needed to guess your rank was to know your skill level and know the time played. And I know skill level is difficult to measure, but pretend that we could just accurately measure it, that I could just look at you and be like, yeah, you're an 8 out of 10 or something. So we're measuring by skill level and time played. If the distribution is flat, then that surely means we only need one variable to predict somebody's rank, right? What I'm trying to say here is that the data indicates anybody who plays for long enough gets out of Silver. There's no skill progression. There's no learning curve. It's simply a factor of how much you play. And Gold looks disturbingly similar to that, if I'm being honest. There's not a super significant slope. Nothing like what we're seeing in Plat and Diamond. So we've highlighted the issue with ranked at the absolute highest level of play, but noted that for Plat and Diamond, the experience is quite healthy. So what's wrong with Bronze, Silver, and Gold? Well, think of what the skill progression from Bronze all the way to Plat should look like. People who are hard-stuck Bronze tend to be new to shooters or maybe even new to gaming in general. They're still learning the basic controls. Getting to Silver for them should probably logically mean they're comfortable with the controls. Now looking at Silver's progression to Gold, these players are usually still getting acquainted with Apex's unique flow and gameplay. They're figuring out where to drop, how to avoid ring damage, positioning, how to find the next ring, how to loot. They know the controls, but they don't necessarily know the game itself. Once you reach Gold, you should basically know your way around the whole game. Now you need to improve your aim and fighting, really hone in on finer mechanics, work on game sense and decision making, and you'll eventually make plat if you improve these enough. Every rank after that is really just refining these skills more and more and reducing your mistakes more and more. These ranks all have a very clear progression of skill, but the problem is that they all get lumped into the same lobbies. A bronze player who is still trying to remember where their jump button is can be put against a gold player who would have made diamond in some previous seasons. That's a massive difference in skill, and I think Respawn is aware of the issue. With over 20% of ranked players sitting in Bronze 4, it's obvious that the learning curve for this game is steep, and the entry can simply be too much for a lot of people. That's why they're trying to implement things like bot matches for new players, as well as the rookie rank. So how can this be fixed? Respawn is obviously trying to address it, but what else can be done about this sort of problem? Well, you could just tighten the matchmaking so that people in their given rank are less likely to match against anyone in a different rank. For example, bronzes match with bronze, silvers with silvers, and etc. But that might cause the same issues we had in Season 12. Imagine a bronze player skyrocketing into silver because they're slightly more comfortable with their keyboard than anyone else, then getting destroyed by silvers who have already been working on finer mechanics. So what if instead we reach some sort of hybrid between the old system and the current one? The current one clearly works fine for plat and above, but what if more emphasis was placed on kills for lower ranks, with a slow transition into placement and decision-making based gameplay? For example, I think we can all agree that anyone who is consistently winning their fight-off drop should probably be hurried onto silver, but when they get to that stage, they should start having to learn how to survive longer into the game. Another question is to ask how much game modes like Team Deathmatch will help with the overall skill of the population. Deathmatch gives players a chance to get into a game with no consequences, get used to the controls, get used to the flow of combat, and not have to worry about extra variables like rotations and looting. Gun game and control offer similar benefits, whereas before new players could only play Battle Royale and Arenas to improve, and Arenas had a pretty steep learning curve as well. Now they have more casual game modes where their mistakes are not punished as harshly, they can get back in quickly after a death, and they can learn the game at their own pace. Will the addition of these game modes be enough to help new players get into the game? If so, then we can consider the entire ranked system to then be a measure of your overall mastery of the game, rather than bronze being do you know the controls, silver being do you know the game itself, and after that being a measure of your progression. Now, I'm not an expert, and I don't have the same access to information that Respawn has, so there's a pretty good chance that they're either working on something similar already, or maybe I'm just way off base on everything. Maybe this progression is perfectly fine, maybe the player base enjoys it, but the data I do have, which is also publicly available to you by the way, thanks to ApexLegendsStatus.com, I'll link that in the description below, it gives me reason to believe that the ranked system is struggling at the extreme left and right. I don't think it's working for new players, and it's certainly not working for Preds. It fits just right for a hard-stuck diamond like me, but can it be better? I'd love to hear your own thoughts on the state of ranked right now, so leave a comment down below and drop some revelation for the rest of us. I also stream on Twitch, by the way, and I'm documenting my progress from hard-stuck Diamond 4 to hopefully hitting Masters. So if you want to see gameplay moments like these in real time and say hi, then you can follow there to see when I go live. Link to that is in the description. I'm trying to reach affiliate by the end of the month, by the way, so every follow and every viewer helps, and I really appreciate you guys coming out to support me. Yeah, that's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all in the comments.